Well, welcome back again this week for another analysis behind the news. Now, I'm going to be dealing with a potpourri today on several subjects. All of them are important enough to have this segment entirely by itself. But I've talked about each one of these things. I'm just going to bring up, kind of a little detail that I think that you need to know in relationship to things we've already discussed. One of them is in this morning's Wall Street Journal. And it shows Ukrainian tank crews standing in front of their tanks. As you know, the Ukrainians are trying to protect Ukrainian territory from a Russian invasion. They call them separatist rebels. They'll call them anything. They've always done that, the communists. And if you're not aware that Putin is a communist, then you've been asleep for a long time. The thing is that they will call any invasion, any rebellion, that sort of thing is a separatist movement, liberation movement, national liberation movement, whatever, except what it really is, and that is that they're under the orders of Moscow or Beijing to have a revolution and start a war. And in this case, it says West races to diffuse Ukraine. That's the headline on here. And the interesting thing is that the caption says that officials from Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France are set to meet Wednesday. Well, this is interesting. Russia, Ukraine, Germany, France, Russia, ex-communist leaders, Ukraine, ex-communist leaders, Germany, an ex-communist leader, Merkel. And then you've got an individual, Holland, who's in charge of France right now, who's a member of the Socialist Internationale, started by Karl Marx. How do you think all that's going to turn out? You see, what they want is a new world order, and part of that new world order, and that's their words for all this, by the way, is the European Union as a regionalized aspect leading toward that one world government. They want the Ukraine into the EU. They want Russia ultimately to control the EU. And they already do that to a large extent because of the ex-communist leaders who are part of Eastern and Central EU and the infiltration that they've done into other governments in Western Europe. Be that as it may, it's just Punch and Judy. That's all it is. You've got Punch on one side and Judy the puppet on the other, and they're fighting each other in front of the curtain, but behind the curtain it's the same puppeteer. And so that's what's going on in the Ukraine. The people who will suffer from this are the people on the ground. The individuals in these various armies, the populations within those areas and everything else. And part of all this, and even a continuing of an article that appeared last Friday, leaders race to Moscow in bid to calm Ukraine crisis. It's all part of this buildup until everybody gets relieved that they finally settle on something which will put this regionalization together. And if you don't think that NATO is not a part of it, it is. Here they're saying NATO hones plans for spearhead force. In other words, they want to have a ready spearhead force to go into any area immediately when they call for troops. And this will be a special force separate from these nations, and it'll be conglomerated into that spearhead. NATO, and I've asked people to do this before, and I'll repeat it now, please go online and read the NATO treaty. Particularly in the first 8 paragraphs, you'll see that NATO is an arm and under the authority of the United Nations. Pure and simple. It was sold to us as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but now they're involved in the Middle East and further even into the subcontinent. And now they're even trying to woo Japan and other countries into NATO under this United Nations force. And so that's part of the subterfuge in all of this. They will put this spearheaded force together, and we will lose some of the control, more control over our own armed forces and under the United Nations and NATO. Coming budget poses test for GOP. Well, ladies and gentlemen, these ersatz conservatives who head up the party, the Republican Party, All they would simply have to do to balance the budget is to get rid of unconstitutional bureaucracies and unconstitutional spending. If they would do that, the budget would be balanced immediately. But they never talk about that. They never talk about curtailing unconstitutional aspects of the federal government when it comes to the budget. Instead, what they talk about is amending the Constitution in order to have a balanced budget amendment, but never, ever talk about forcing Congress to adhere to the original intent of the Constitution and cut spending by getting rid of unconstitutional bureaucracies, Department of Education, Department of Energy, that sort of thing. It'd save us a lot of money, and the budget would be balanced. By the way, another thing that has occurred last week, everybody was happy that the House of Representatives again voted to get rid of Obamacare. But the fine print down in the act that they passed called for committees of the House of Representatives to explore alternatives to Obamacare. In other words, they're not getting rid of government control over health care. What they want to do is have a Republican plan. Maybe they'll call it Romneycare again. Who knows? But at any rate, they need a government-controlled health care program in order to merge all these nations that they're trying to get to merge into, whether it's the EU or in the Pacific or the North Atlantic or the North American Union, whatever particular thing they're working on at the moment, to get us to merge with these other governments. They need to have socialized medicine to do that. Why? Because you cannot merge free enterprise with a socialist system, whether it's in anything, whether it's in this particular instance, health care. You can't, one of the two has to go. We'll either lose free enterprise or they will lose socialist health care because they're incompatible, oil and water, that kind of thing. So they need to do this in order to merge our nations. The leadership in the House of Representatives, in the person of John Boehner, belongs to the Transatlantic Policy Network, which has as a goal of merging the United States with the European Union. And part of that process is to merge our healthcare systems as well. So we need a Republican plan for socialized medicine instead of a Democrat plan for socialized medicine. And by the way, speaking of balanced budgets and all that sort of thing, something that we've been trying to say to people for a long time is that there is a plan to have a runaway constitutional convention. And they put all sorts of verbiage out in front of us. They talk about it being this and that, convention of the states, and so on and so forth. But what a lot of people haven't noticed lately is that a lot of these resolutions and acts that they're putting in front of the legislatures are calling only for the Constitutional Convention itself. I've got 4 of them right here. And these states, like Hawaii and Indiana and South Carolina and Arkansas, have put these resolutions in the hopper for a constitutional convention without any instructions other than to go and meet and have a convention to discuss the Constitution. That's fraught with danger, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, everybody refers to us as fearmongers and that sort of thing, while they are constitutional scholars. That's what we're seeing more and more in the rhetoric. They're fine, upstanding constitutional scholars, and we're just fearmongers. And yeah, we're very fearful when we see things like this, where no instructions are given at all to whoever will represent their state to the Constitutional Convention. Just go there and open it up. A lot of things we need to talk about. And we're starting to see words coming from some of these individuals who really want to emasculate the Constitution of the United States. But just listen to the conservatives. Don't look behind the curtain over here, what's going on there at the same time in unison and working together with these conservatives. So this is something that you really have to watch. Until next week, we'll see you then.